Robin and Steve. This is our boat Rikali. For about 10 months we've been back home in Tassie, but are preparing to set sail again, this time to New Zealand. My work at the circus studio finished on a high with the end of year show. And so I bid farewell to these superstars before doing my last silks training on a stable rig. Before packing away the silks and putting them in the shed. I bid farewell to my acrobat friends and enjoyed one last training session. Of course, Mark and I could have held this forever, but I had things to do. Like bid our house farewell. We will miss throwing our chickens wheat. Ah, chickens, so entertaining. Anyway, for the most part, our house was clear and ready for our tenants to arrive. Apart from one thing that just wouldn't be shifted. A tiger snake had moved into the bathroom. Even the snake catcher couldn't catch snake, so there was nothing to do but go out to breakfast at our favourite cafe. Farewell, Porthole. To check out of Australia, we had to sail away from home, past Arch Rock and toward Kettering. From there we could do the final things like fruit and vegetable shopping and having nice long showers. I filmed this long shower. Once the storm subsided, we enjoyed one last kayak before packing the kayak away and stow it, ready for the voyage. We filled our water tanks right to the top. We scrubbed and plucked our hiking boots in preparation for New Zealand quarantine. My friends from the sailing group Water Women came to see us off before going sailing themselves. Bon voyage, Louise. Lovely friends took turns dropping by to wish us well, and even to dance for us. Extra points for dancing. And all of these gems brought food for us. Sorry, swans, we're not going to give you any. Hello. We appreciated one last Tassie sunset and awoke to a glassy morning. It was time to pull out the Tasman Sea chart. I'm so glad that my family stopped by to say goodbye. I was feeling nervous, and they gave me much needed hugs. Our route was entered in the chart plotter and adjusted to make sure that we didn't hit any rocks. Border Force came to check us out, and they were lovely. And then we had to head non-stop to New Zealand. Goodbye, Kettering. Goodbye, Kunanyi. Dontre Castro Channel was quite rough, as evidenced by the Sydney to Hobart yacht making its way north. In uncomfortable seas, dolphins always help. The tall cliffs of the Tasman Peninsula seemed to reach high to say goodbye. And the light of this waxing moon was much appreciated. This was our first sunrise at sea, and was to be our last calm morning for some time. Set our sails to a close reach and continued for days. On our first calmer day, Steve tested out this new amazing device. Check out our boat. And cue dolphins. Only 2 days out of 14 were this calm. Most of the time it was too rough to film. During our alternate watches, we would shelter under the Dodger in case crashing waves came over the side. Generally, we had to hang on with 2 hands, so we didn't film much of the trip. It had eased off by this stage. Sunshine certainly helps morale, though. Barely had to change the sails at all, and occasionally had to adjust the wind vane. and although we took our watches seriously, we only saw one other boat until we reached New Zealand, and it was far away. Here's a clue of what a calm day might look like. I had the sunrise watch. Sometimes I'd do my hair to prevent it turning into a giant dreadlock. If I felt up to it, I would do some balancing and some strength work. This choice of activewear is out of necessity. Notice that I'm clipped on, because Steve is asleep. At 6 a.m, I go to bed. Whatever the conditions, we take turns trying to rest. Here's Steve doing his morning exercises. On calm days, we would overlap to prepare feasts. On rough days, we'd do whatever was necessary to stay fed. We loved once it got warm enough to take our wet weather gear off. This was probably my 9 a.m. watch. Soon Steve went to bed, and I would use my incredible piece of cloth with prusik loops. I could hang it off the winches and sit in the companionway, use it as a backrest, or use it as a daybed. Piece of cloth, you're the best. We are not sponsored in any way by Piece of Cloth. Whoever was trying to sleep would tip downhill against that wall that's right next to the waves. If it got calm enough to cook, it still took 2 people to get the meals plated and out to the cockpit. Washing the dishes also took 2 people. Steve just had to place the clean dishes on the counter and they'd slide down the hill to me. Had I not been there, the cutlery may well have shot off the counter. One little flying fish found its way onto our deck and died. And here is the next sad fish, a watermelon tuna, or skipjack. We were glad to change up our meals, so thank you, fish. Rakali shot forward like a galloping horse, smashing through waves, some of which found their way through our anchor chain locker, soaking our V-berth. After day 3, our cabin was filled with wet mattresses. But we sailed on through sunsets and sunrises, rolling to and fro, but always on an angle, to the port side. We found different options of how to maintain watch without being crashed by waves. To avoid a cool breeze, I would nestle into what usually is a foot area, where I could still reach the chart plotter. We did get some nasty squalls. Steve had to put a 3rd reef in the mainsail, and as much as he didn't enjoy being upside down, he did spend a bit of time looking in the bilge, checking for leaks and checking pumps. This was our first time using a radar. Turns out at night it's useful for telling us where the squalls are. At noon every day, Steve would record our position in the log, whatever the weather. We did have the occasional calm chunk of time, like this for instance. Well, it was still a bit rolly. For a couple of hours, we even enjoyed spinnaker time. After leaving Tassie waters, the only signs of human life we saw were satellites in the night sky and a couple of jets. Seabirds were the only other life forms we were seeing. Here's an albatross. Relatively calm days like this were a great opportunity to prepare feasts. The chef still has to hang on though, and never place anything free on the counter. Yum! Once we reached New Zealand waters, we had to fly our quarantine flag to let any other ships know that we were from international waters and had not yet checked in. On one of my 3 a.m. watches, I saw land, these islands, off northwest New Zealand. So I guess this was my first New Zealand sunrise, because we were back in range of VHF Radio New Zealand.
Either tomorrow afternoon, Monday afternoon, or Tuesday early morning. We'll update tomorrow.
For the last legs of our trip, we had to tack, adding 500 nautical miles to our journey. After huge seas and 40-knot winds, entering the Bay of Islands was a breath of fresh air. The sun was rising, so we could actually see where we were going, Opua. All we had left to do was to tie up to the quarantine wharf and wait for quarantine staff. And to feast on celebratory pancakes with blueberries, our last fresh fruit. Then we could finally rest. As we waited for the quarantine staff to come and check us into New Zealand. Thank you, Rikali. What an incredible boat. After a punishing 14 days at sea and over 1,700 nautical miles, you got us safely to New Zealand. Join us next time as we recover from this grueling journey and begin to explore the Bay of Islands, New Zealand.